Hello everyone, and welcome to another Dwarven Tavern video. I am Dr. Jeff Goins, your host for this particular episode. Okay, sure. The subject of this video is, or perhaps it is our psionics. And I'm not talking about psionicist character classes as the scion and other this thing or that that's in the 3 and beyond editions of D&D or any other gaming system. I am talking about first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons psionics. Now, why am I talking about this, you may ask me? Go ahead. I'll tell you why. Because first edition psionics, even though I've heard a lot of people who absolutely hate them, and they have their reasons, but I particularly really enjoy psionics because they are class independent, meaning that it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If you have psionics, that is being like exceptionally gifted mentally, which can happen. You know, I mean, there are people in the world today who are like, you know, everything from nuclear physicists to hairdressers to, and that wasn't an opposite end of the spectrum from intelligence to stupid. I want you to know that. That's not what I meant. Because I've known a lot of really smart nuclear physicists. What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. You can be gifted psionically, and I think I already said that once. So even I could have psionics, and the reason that I like this is that this, and I actually had an experiment with it, and I will actually tell you about that a little bit later, but that it honestly does apply, or can be applied to any gaming system because of its class independence, right? So let's take a look at what psionics are, or is. What psionics is. That would actually be correct as well. So what we have, and I'm sorry about that, I don't like doing that. What we have here is a failure to communicate. The reason that first edition psionics were always so cool to me is that it was an in-game thing, number one. You could only acquire psionics when you rolled up your character, or if there was some other kind of intervention by some other superpowered being, and I will discuss that later as well. But upon character creation, you had to have extremely high mental stats, which makes sense. If your one or more unmodified intelligence, wisdom, or charisma ability scores were 16 or higher, you might have psionics. Whether or not this ability is possessed is then determined by a dice roll using percentile dice. Any score of 0 indicates that the ability exists, but you have to have at least one of those three, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, has to be a 16 or higher. And if that's the case, then you are, if only one of them is above 16 or 16 or higher, then you will be a very, very weak and limited, dinky-doodle little psionic at best. Even if your other rolls are phenomenal, you know your mentals are good, and you know you're evolved enough, I think, to have the psionics, right? But you don't have the phenomenal mental powers that would afford you a large psionic potential. For each 1 point of intelligence above 16, you add 2.5 to your die roll, the dice roll, because it's percentile dice. For each 1 point of wisdom above 16, you add a point and a half. And for each 1 point of charisma above 16, you add 1/2 to the dice roll, dropping all fractions. It's always low. It's always rounded down. So if you have an intelligence of 17, a wisdom of 12, and a charisma of 17, there are 2.5 points added to the psionic potential roll, because the intelligence is 1 above 16 and 1/2 point of charisma for 1 above 16. Total of 2.5 plus 1/2, which is plus 3. So you would have to roll, if you had a 17, an intelligence, wisdom, and charisma of 17, 12, and 17, you would have a total of plus 3% to the roll. So that right there shows you that it's an extremely rare gift, right? So any score of 97 or higher, and you still have to roll a 97, even though you've got like a 17, a 12, and a 17. You still have to roll a 97 or better. Very rare talent. Okay, and that's abused, I'm sure. But in my old gaming group, when we were, when I was a teenager playing Dungeons and Dragons, we always rolled together, with each of us kind of moderating or dungeon mastering our additional rolls. This moderation kept us from cheating, as we were often prone to be tempted to do, but I never did. Even though I would, roll percentile dice and jokingly say, if I got like a 98, I'd be, hey, I can have a character with psionics. I'm going to keep that roll for that, and then I'll roll this one for something else. And they'd be like, no. But I really wasn't serious. So, and then if you do get that high roll, and you do have psionics, then you have to go through the endowment process of giving yourself psionics. And the psionically endowed characters rolls percentile dice, adding 1 point to the total for each unmodified point of intelligence, wisdom, and charisma above 12. If 2 of these are above 16, the number of points is doubled. If all 3 scores are above 16, then the points are quadrupled. The base score of 1 to 100 of the percentile roll, plus bonuses of 1 to 72 for the additional points that are potentially quadrupled. Then, if any, are added together in a total of the psionic strength of the individual. It is the strength of for the attack and for the defense. So if you have 172, if that's what you roll, if you get a 0/0 on your strength roll, your psionic strength roll with your modified scores involved, then that's how much you get for attack and for defense. Now this is probably where we start to lose people, because this is, I wouldn't say it's complicated by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a few numbers, and I don't think any of them are over 3 digits, right? So it's real simple math, but it's still too complicated for some people's sensibilities. Put it that way. And my cat is mad. So, I don't know if you can hear that, but that's my Xena, the warrior princess. She's ticked off. That is actually added together, the 172 potential maximum of 172. Those are added together to give you your psionic ability. Okay, what's the difference? Well, this is another layer of complexity that probably loses some folks. And I'm not saying that any of you would be lost by this, because you guys are watching Dwarven Tavern videos, so you have to be at least fairly intelligent. Give your all a pat on the back for me. So the psionic ability is the things that are not very specifically psionic combat. There are 5 psionic attacks and 5 psionic defenses. And the attack and defense is what you get the half. You know, you split your psionic ability in half and you give yourself that for attack and defense. The other psionic abilities are things like telepathy and telekinesis and molecular manipulation and probability travel and blah blah blah. You've got minors and you got majors, and they're all incredibly cool. Levitation, mind over body, suspend animation, shape alteration, etc., etc. And those come off the total points of your psionic ability, which is double the initial roll, the 172. So, to me, it seems fairly simple. It was really easy to understand. Now here's the thing that I want you to think about. If you were playing a Pathfinder character, which we've got a couple of Pathfinder campaigns running right now, if you're playing a Pathfinder character, they can have psionics. These actual psionics. If you were playing a D&D 5th edition D&D, you could do this. 3.5, totally. We don't talk about the other edition. So that's the thing. That's the thing that I like so much about the first edition Psionics, because they're class independent. Now later on we had in the 5th edition they had things like the battle mind and the scion and blah blah blah. And those are okay. I mean, I didn't really care for them. But you know, if it's something that you would dig, of course, you know, have at it. I applaud your ability to find things you like, and if it works for you, that's wonderful, right? Because it's all good, as long as you get what you want out of it, right? Okay, so when you roll up your character, or when you roll up your psionics, you roll percentile dice again in 2 different arenas here. One is for the number of attack modes you get, and one is for the number of defense modes you get. And you roll a 1 to 25 for 1, and a 96 to 00, you get all 5. And that can be intervened with, of course, like I said with back at the beginning about intervention, like divine intervention, or you know, high-powered character intervention. You can get more unlocked, or you can create quests to unlock other things, or meet that wise old man on the mountain that will train you for X number of whenever, and help you unlock your greater potential, etc., etc. And it's a lot of fun to do so. So you get potentially up to 5 attack modes, up to 5 defense modes. And the thing that I loved so much about the psionics in the 1st edition was the fact that we could have psionic combat in the blink of an eye, because the psionic, there's 10 psionic combat rounds. That's 5, Jeff, and this is 10. There are 10 psionic combat rounds in a normal combat round, in a melee round, and it's not melee. It's melee. And the other thing that I like about it was that here in the Dungeon Master's Guide, I mean, this is in one of the appendices of the 1st edition Player's Handbook. This is a new 1st edition Player's Handbook that you can get like on Amazon or whatever, and you know, highly recommend it, especially the Dungeon Master's Guide. Now, this is my original Dungeon Master's Guide. Someone actually stole my original Player's Handbook, and I'm still, the next time I see them, one of us ain't walking away. The thing that I love about the Dungeon Master's Guide from the 1st edition, it's got so much information in it about the world, not about the fantasy world. It's got stuff like, you know, different types of government. I learned so much as a kid with this 1st edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Like, you know, I was 15 years old, and I was going to high school talking about, you know, how we're living in an oligarchy, and they're like, "What are you talking about? What is that?" And it's like, "Oh, well, obviously, it's government run by the wealthy few." Of course, that's more prevalent today than it is, you know. So, but anyway, the Dungeon Master Guide is just like so much information. It's just wonderful. And I actually still refer to it in some places when we are gaming. I still refer to it for various things. Okay, now, what you do with psionic combat, and the way we did it, is you have an attack and you have a defense, and you have to decide what you're going to do. You can defend with one of your 5. Let's just say that both combatants have all 5, which has happened on several occasions. And you throw up a defense and you throw out an attack, so it's like shield weapon, right? And the attacks are Psionic Blast, Mind Thrust, Ego Whip, Id Insinuation, and Psychic Crush. And it even tells what the various attacks actually do. Psionic, and this is cool, and I will share this. Psionic Blast is a wave of brain force, in effect much like stunning news to the mind. It is a costly attack. It is costly in attack point expenditure, but it is the only psionic attack that can affect non-psionic creatures. The attack is cone-shaped, wave of force, 5 feet in diameter at its source, and 20 feet in diameter at its terminus, 60 feet away. So it's like, baziern. Mind Thrust is a stabbing attack which seeks to short the synapses of the defender. The attack is individual, so it's like zap. Ego Whip, like the whip back here. That's not an ego whip, that's actually just leather. It attacks the ego either by feelings of inferiority and worthlessness or by superiority and megalomania. The attack affects but a single creature, so it's just like godlike or worthless. Id Insinuation seeks to loose the uncontrolled subconscious mind of the defender, pitting it against the superego. The attack affects all psionically aware creatures in a 20-foot by 20-foot area within the attack range. So it's like, poof. And everyone that's psionic in that area has to defend themselves or suffer the consequences. And we'll talk about the consequences in a second. And then the Psychic Crush is a massive assault on all the neurons in the brain, attempting to destroy all by a massive overload of signals. It's just like a blast of epilepsy. Okay, and this mode of attack affects but one defender. If it is used against the user, the user may defend with only mode G, Thought Shield, or have no defense at all. So that was a consideration, an important consideration. Now, what we would do, let me describe the defenses, since we're on the subject. The Mind Blank, it's Mind Blank, Thought Shield, Mental Barrier, Intellect Fortress, and Tower of Iron Will. And they go from the least to the most expensive. Mind Blank attempts to hide the mind from attack, making its parts unidentifiable. Thought Shield cloaks the mind so as to hide first one part, then the other. This defense can be kept up at all times, unlike the others. Mental Barrier is a carefully built thought repetition wall which exposes only that small area. So it's like, I'm going to read his mind. Cream cheese. What? That's all that's in there. It's just cream cheese. Okay. Then the guys want cream cheese. Intellect Fortress is a defense which calls forth the powers of the ego and the superego to stop attacks. So that's powerful. The Intellect Fortress is. And the Tower of Iron Will relies only upon the superego to build an unassailable haven for the brain. So you just, and that's essentially what it does. So, what you do, and it's really a game of chess when you're doing this. And the way we just did it back in the day was we would take index cards and we would have our defenses on one set and our attacks on the other, and we would look through our cards and we would decide which one we were going to do on each side, attack and defense. And then we'd count 3 and lay them out. And the combatants would, you know, at the same time. Okay. Then we would go to the psionic and mental combat table here on page 76, and you would run the matrix of your total psionic strength, which would be that, and then you would have the defense mode. Okay, psionic blast costs 20. Mind Thrust is 4, Ego Whip is 7, Insinuation is 10, and Psychic Crush is 14. Those are your attack point costs. Then Mind Blank is 1, Thought Shield is 2, Mental Barrier is 3, Intellect Fortress is 8, and Tower of Iron Will is 10. And again, going from least to most expensive. And then when the attack would smack into the defense, I'll put it that way, it would cost more points depending on which were which. For example, if you threw up a Thought Shield and they hit you with an Id Insinuation, you would take 0 damage. And the damage is done to your psionic defense total. Right? So that means that it's like pounding into those shields. Right? And the shield would buckle a little bit even though it held. Now, the Thought Shield, the Id Insinuation, does nothing against the Thought Shield. So it's just like that's the perfect defense for that attack. If you're lucky enough to get that. If you have 126 points or up, the Id Insinuation would do 26 points of ability damage, of strength damage, because strength is half, ability is both of them. And there you go. So after that, everybody would calculate their totals because all the attacks and defenses are simultaneous. Then we would go into this little mental game of what's he gonna do next, because okay, he hit me with an Id Insinuation. I put up Thought Shield. Okay, that means that he's going to try to put up something that would be good against the Thought Shield, which would actually be the Psionic Blast. So I have to put up something that's good against Psionic Blast, and that's the Tower of Iron Will, but I know he's smart, so he's going to hit me with another Id Insinuation because the Id Insinuation is awesome against the Tower of Iron Will. So that means I'll keep up my Thought Shield. And then he would be going through the same number of, calculations, like what's he going to do, and he's going to know this, and he's going to know this about me, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit him with the Psionic Blast and zap him because he thinks that I know that he knows, and I know that he knows. Ha 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 ha! So then we would do the same thing over again until one of the combatants lost their defenses. Okay, when you lose your defenses, when both sides of attack, one's defended, one's blah 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 blah. Then once he loses his defensive ability, then we go over to the defender's psionics, or the attack. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting excited. This is so much fun. The psionic attack upon defenseless psionics, which is entirely different from the psionic attack against someone who doesn't have psionic, against a non-psionic. Okay, so you have another matrix here on page 77 of the first ed DMG, and if you have 126 points and up, if that's your, and they always go by your current, so it's never that high unless you're some kind of a god or something. So let's go to the 51 to 75 range because combat's been going on for a while. If I go with a psionic blast and their total psionic strength is, and it's what, it can be up to 172, but it goes all the way up to 310 plus for someone who's, like godlike. But if they're we'll go to the 177 range, which is 160 to 209. If he's defenseless, if his defenses are down, if his shields are down, and I hit him with a psionic blast, he will be confused for 2 to 8 rounds, no psionic ability, be like, what? That's weird. I don't understand what cream cheese is about. If I hit him with a mind thrust, he is psionically wounded, which means one attack or defense mode or psionic discipline is unusable for 2 to 8 weeks. So, it'd be like, I'll just telekinesis, ow, I've got a wound in my psionics. Okay? If it's an ego whip, they take 25 points to their attack power, because remember, you can be out of defenses and still have attack strength. So that zaps them, and it hurts their other psionic total. So they can, it's like, ow, you're hurting me. And if it's an id insinuation, it's 35 points of damage to their psionic attack. And if it's a psychic crush, there is a 45% chance that you will be instantly slain. And it just goes on with everything from can be killed, and if you're killed in psionic combat, raising and resurrection is possible, but your psionic ability is lost, so it just burned you out. Permanent loss of 1 attack or defense mode or psionic discipline and dazed as above. Idiocy, psionic ability is lost forever, though idiocy is curable by a heal spell, and it's just a shame that we don't have heal spells in the real world, especially on Facebook. Then you have sleeping. You put them to sleep, and that's a coma for 1 to 4 weeks. And there is a 99% chance that the catatonic state will be mistaken for death. So they can bury you. And you're like sawing logs. Okay, and that's the dangers of psionic combat. So, it's really crazy. And then, of course, if you are defenseless, if you're non-psionic and you get hit with a psionic on a non-psionic creature, it can be death, coma, sleep, stun, confuse, enrage, panic, feeble mind, permanent insanity, temporary insanity, or mild insanity. And they have all these insanity tables here, which I think are also fairly generic as far as game system goes. So you could apply those to just about anything. And the coolest thing about this is a self-contained system. So it can be used with any game system that employs, like the 6 abilities, like the 3 mental abilities. Which is cool because back in the day I had a player who was not psionic, and he met a mind flayer, and the mind flayer zapped him, and it messed his day up bad. I mean, he was left, jellified in a freaking corner in a fetal position, having urinated himself, and etc. And the mind flayer ran away because it was in the territory of a more powerful psionic, and who actually found this character and kind of rescued him and nursed him back to health, did some psionic healing on him and some psychic surgery on him, and gave him some psionic abilities because of a series of books that called the Dearney Chronicles, if you're old enough to remember that. And the Dearney were psionic humans. They were all psionic to varying degrees of strength. And they had a thing called psychic surgery, and this character did psychic surgery on the player. The player's character, not the player. He wishes, right? And did that psychic surgery on him, and gave him psionics because he wanted a way to for the guy to defend himself. right? So, because mind flayers are monsters, they're monstrous when it comes to fighting, picking on those weaker than themselves. They're just freaking bullies, and that's just all there is to it, right? So, the mind flayer, I think I finally figured out how to fold this map with Freeport. I got it. He healed, he nursed him back to health and all that storybook stuff like you might expect to find in a story. And so he went back after the mind flayer. He went looking for him, and he met up with him. And the mind flayer, its only psychic ability was the blast, the psionic blast. And he messed that mind flayer's day just completely. Only he didn't leave it alive. He blasted it with it, and it had like 2 defense modes. So after a couple of times going back and forth, he realized that. And because you can't tell how many attacks or defenses they have, you can't see their weapons until you fight them. So he figured out that he only had two defenses, and then he just exploited that and blew its brains clean out, and discovered that once horrifying mind flayers were no longer so. And this is actually something that can take place in any setting, because there are mind flayers in 3.5. There's mind flayers in 5. Notice the number I skipped. And there's stuff like that in Pathfinder. And it's just cool, and you can apply these to anything. And we actually have a 3.5 because I wanted to see, and I told you I'd tell you about this earlier. I wanted to see what it would be like to have first edition psionics, or the first age psionics, into a 3.5 game. So one of the Saints, in the Saints campaign, because I've mentioned those guys before, we have a Saints campaign going, and it's almost done. Almost, about this much. And in the Saints campaign, one of the characters rescued a first age character that had been imprisoned since the first age, and in gratitude, I guess. Well, yeah, I'm the DM, so yeah, it was gratitude. I can say that with confidence. In gratitude, this rescued character imbued his rescuer with first age psionics, and he also gave him a way to give others psionics, to unlock their psionic ability. And so this character started using the first aid psionics, and it actually kind of spread like a virus, which was incredibly cool. And there's now a number of characters with psionics, first edition psionics, and it works just fine. It works out wonderfully. So I highly recommend it. At least give it a try. And you can nerf it in any way possible, any way you see fit as a DM. If you just do a little bit of research and see what's too much and what's not enough, and adjust it accordingly. You're the DM. You can do that with subtlety, if you so choose. Don't metagame. Metagaming is bad. Ruins the whole flavor of the game. It's like eating a big bowl of ice cream and someone handing you the chemicals that it was made of. Like, oh, I didn't know that was in it. So yeah, that's basically my rant about. Well, it wasn't a rant. It was more like proselytizing psionics from the first edition. But I would like for you to try it, and when you do try it, I would love to hear the stories, because the joy is in the hearing. What book's that from? And see what happens, and tell us what happens, and we will congratulate you, or console, counsel maybe. Mental health is an issue, clearly. So anyway, that's psionics and first edition to whatever. And I am your host, Dr. Jeff Mullins of the Dwarven Tavern. And on behalf of the entire cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern, We wish for you to want for nothing but adventure. And at first I feared it, then I charged. It blasted it with a psionic blast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.